もう帰っちゃうなんて残念だわ。
ちょっと様子を見てくる。
何やってる
Oh, this one's a real mess.
Oh, hey everybody, over here, Frank found another one.
Hi there everyone, Lars here with another Apothecaries review and analysis brought to you by Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers, because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. And man, I just enjoyed another fantastic episode of this show. And this was one that I was not expecting at all. I thought we were going to have someone try to whisk Maomao back on over to the rear palace, and we're going to get back into the shenanigans and whatnot, because there was just this weird, eerie feeling at the end of the last episode where I was just like, something big is about to happen. Well, something big did happen this episode, but it was most definitely not what I was expecting. In this episode, we had an attempted murder. So to very quickly go over the events of this episode, Maomao wakes up pretty late in the day, wondering where her father went. There's a knock at the door, and there's a little girl who's asking for the apothecary because there's something horrible happening at one of the brothels. She takes Maomao with her. They go and they find that a customer and a courtesan have been poisoned. The courtesan is actually I wouldn't say doing well. She's very clearly poisoned, but she is alive. For the guy, he's not breathing. So Maomao has to make sure that there's no vomit in his throat, because the other prostitutes have said, no, we've already made sure that they've ejected whatever venom was in them. And she's like, well, now I've got to resuscitate him by any means necessary, clear the saliva out of his throat, get his heart pumping again, and everything. What a lovely way to wake up in the morning. Well, she manages to revive the guy, and now a mystery is on their hands. Her father is called in by the same little girl, who Maomao realizes she's got some shifty eyes and interesting expressions going on while all of this is happening. And her father reads the situation very clearly with a practiced eye and sees some details to the poisoning that Maomao didn't see her first time glancing over the situation. Well, their investigation is brought to an abrupt end as the madame of the house says, oh, thank you so much for all of your work and your understanding. Here are some really delicious cookies. And here's also a bunch of money and hush money, which Maomao's father's like, oh, no, not, you don't need to worry about that. Maomao's like, do you have to pay rent? We're taking the money and the cookies too. Thank you. Which she then only recognizes a little too late. Oh, we're now stuck in a contract. This isn't just simply, oh, thank you for saving us. Please don't talk about it because we don't want to bring any unwanted attention to our brothel. No, it's way more complicated than that. You have a full-on attempted murder, which is solidified by the fact that the little girl who had summoned Maomao to the brothel then tries to stab the customer in his sleep as he's recovering from being poisoned. This leads Maomao to investigate even further and come to realize that this customer is a real jerkwad who loves to flaunt his fantastic father's wealth amongst the prostitutes, tease them with the prospects of freedom, that he will buy out their contracts before they are used up, and that he will marry them and love them, and yet right before their contract is up, he dumps them, he drops them, and basically destroys all of their hopes and dreams, and leaves them in the brothel to then go for the next cute girl. As such, there's a lot of women who really hate the way that this guy has treated women. They've even tried to poison him in the past, but he just doesn't get the hint. He hires guards, his father continues to protect him, he throws around a bunch of hush money, and then throws around more money for play. What business does this guy's father have that he can continue to do this on the regular in a high-end red light district? I would love to know. In any case, the ladies of this brothel have come together to propose an assassination, or at least that's what Maomao deduces from all of the different clues, and that they managed to get him in this by attempting what would look like a double suicide. That the prostitute in question did something really, really smart right here, where she poisoned the drink supposedly with tobacco leaves, and did something really fun and cool by showing this little parlor trick of, oh look, different alcohols will sit on top of each other if you pour them just right because of the density of the drink. To which the guy's like, oh, well, that's really cool. And she's like, yes, and now I will drink from it seductively. And so he's like, okay, it's not poison because no prostitute's going to poison herself. Everything is fine. He drinks it. He gets poisoned. She drinks just a little bit, so she also poisons herself to cover herself. And all of the other girls are in on it. And if the guy didn't die by poison, then the little girl whose sister probably committed suicide is what it seems to be suggested by the dialogue because of how he had treated her. She goes in for the kill if he isn't offed by the poison. Wow, that is a really intense plot right there. And when Maomao thinks about it, it seems as though everyone is in on it. From the little girl, to the prostitutes, to the madame of the house, everyone was in on getting rid of this scumbag. While there's plenty of evidence around, they've accepted the hush money already. If Maomao goes even further, she will incur the wrath of this brothel and everyone who is attached to it. And this is her home. She's not going to uproot all kinds of connections. She's not going to make trouble for her ailing, aging father. No, but this means that there is a problem that is still on the loose that needs to be resolved. And as she reflects on her investigation, the things that she has discovered, she makes a really good connection. Something that I've brought up before is that there is a real connection between the red light district and the politics of the rear palace. They are indeed different worlds with their own rules and everything, but there's a lot of similarities between them. And as she herself says, it's basically a cage, a beautiful one, and a one wherein if you can thrive within that cage, you're doing really well, but it is a cage nonetheless. So from the lowest working girl to the highest concubine, it is still a cage, which again highlights something that I've said again and again, that this is a story about strong women taking their identity, taking their autonomy, taking power back to themselves in a situation that they didn't really want to be in. Yes, I understand, the working girls and even the concubines get a pension, and Maomao even brings up that she just has one more year left of her contract before she will be allowed to leave the rear palace. Supposedly. Maomao doesn't realize that she has made herself invaluable to various very powerful concubines, and that they will very likely do everything in their power to make sure that she does not leave after her contract is up. On top of that, we have a guy like Jinji, who is very interested in her, as we see at the end of this episode. He is not going to let her leave of her own free will and choosing once her contract is up either. Once you are in the cage, you are in the cage. For these prostitutes as well, it is a dream to have their contract bought out and to be with the man that they love, or with the man that loves them. Supposedly, that's the dream right there. However, how many of them get to experience that? Even for the most popular, the most beautiful, the most sought after, the most expensive prostitutes, that is a dream that they will very likely never achieve. As we learned in one of the earlier episodes with the Chinese princess escaping with her true love, it is a very daring risk and a story that doesn't usually play out well for the conspirators to get out of this cage and to find their true freedom. Instead, these women are resigned to doing what they can within the situation to retain their dignity, their individuality, and their power as well as they can. And ultimately, that is the message of this episode, that Maomao realizes that by the end, and her place within it. Now, she may be a little bit naive in thinking that she can escape after a year once her contract is up, but now that she understands the game that is being played a little bit better, we will see how that factors into her actions, her way of thinking, the connections that she makes with people, because as the end of this episode very clearly states, she has been put into a game, making connections with people that is going to play out in a really interesting way, I believe. Especially when we see just how jealous Jinshi is with finding out that Maomao went with Leihaku to go to the red light district and back home rather than asking him. Yes, he has an absolute crush on her. Yes, he wants her to come to him for resources, for advice, for help, for leaving the palace grounds. This is the relationship that he wishes to initiate with her, but, and there's a whole lot more that probably goes along with having these kinds of political connections within the rear palace. As far as Maomao is concerned, you're a weird, creepy guy, Jinshi. And so, it's funny because she's kind of gloating over the fact that, yes, I did go with a lower-ranking officer to get back to my home for a couple of days. He's rubbing it in his face, not realizing that what she's actually saying can be very easily interpreted as, I slept with him and I did a great job. And I love how it absolutely breaks Jinshi. It really takes me back to the days of miscommunications, dating, and all of the weird Game of Thronesy backstabbings that comes with dating. High school and college were really weird. In any case, let's move on and wrap up what we can right here. This is an interesting episode in that, well, it's not necessarily a really big one in the sense that we're getting all of this amazing plot progression. However, again, we get that very important message of the similarities between the red light district and the rear palace, and Maomao realizing what kind of game she is now in, what kinds of rules she is now going to have to play by, even if she still might be a little bit naive in thinking that her contract will be up and she'll be able to return to her father. There are some other things that we can pull out of this. I love that this episode establishes very firmly just how intelligent and insightful Maomao is. However, it takes just one really good scene with her father to show how, even though she's really smart, she doesn't know everything. There's still a lot that she can learn, and especially how to read a scene and how to read people even better. That's what her father is very good at. And so what this means is that in the future, there is room for Maomao to make mistakes, for her to learn. And it's good to have that because your main character, needs to constantly be growing and learning throughout the course of your story. And another thing that was very brief, and I don't know what's going on here with this, is when the other prostitutes ask, hey, have you yet gone to the annex? And we get the briefest of shots where Maomao is in a very dark room, definitely not back at her house, and she's looking down at someone or something very despondently. What on earth is going on here? Could that be her mother? I don't know. Could that be a sibling? I don't know. I would say perhaps a mother, perhaps a friend. I don't know, but this is obviously something else going on right here, that there is someone else back at home other than her father, who Maomao is keeping pretty secret from everyone else. Other people are in on it, but obviously no one back at the rear palace knows that there is a precious/dangerous secret back at the red light district. And that could be something that could be an Achilles heel for Maomao in the future, should anyone know what is in the annex. Again, this is really interesting. This is something that you should give to your main characters. Weaknesses other than just something that they could easily overcome by learning, growing, gaining power. There are some weaknesses, which, as Nathan has talked about on our podcast, that writers refer to as banes, as an issue that cannot be simply resolved by the main character doing something or gaining something. Instead, it is a weakness, it is a challenge on a personal level that is a constant reminder to the main character that they are indeed human, that they have room to grow, that there are issues that they must overcome, and that they just can't simply one-shot their way through life, which is something that way too many stories and way too many creators have forgotten that they need, because it is those weaknesses, it is those fears, it is those obstacles that someone may never overcome that really make a main character way more interesting and even relatable to the audience. So this episode, while not big in terms of plot, is a very insightful episode into the growth and character of Maomao. And again, it helps just to establish the kind of world that we are dealing with. And that is very good for a story, because sometimes we get so into a story that we think that we understand all of the rules, that we think we understand what we're really dealing with here, but then we realize, oh, the world is way bigger and way more complex than I realized, which is how real life works. And it's always fascinating, and it's always really engaging to see when a fictional story can actually capture that same feeling of when you realize, oh, the world is way bigger and way more interesting and way more complex than I realized. And it gives you a sense of appreciation for the world building that the author has put into their story, as well as the detail that they've put into where their main character inhabits this vast, expansive world. And even if that world is as small as a rear palace and a red light district, it can still be highly complex. And that's something that's just, that's really great writing, when you can take even just one setting and show just how deep that setting really is. And I'm not talking about physical depth, but I'm talking about the metaphysical, the human connections, the history, the science, the philosophy. That is stuff that you really can tease out in world building. World building is not just, this is the mountain, this is the name, this is the road that leads to the mountain, this is the king that built it, these are the people who live along it. No, we want to know about the culture of the people who live along that road. What is the ancient history behind said mountain, of the people who've mined it, the people who've died on it, the stories of what gods inhabit that mountain, and how does that affect someone's superstitions, or the nightmares, or the stories that they tell. That is world building. So that's really all I have to say for episode 8. I'm looking forward to where we go next, with Maomao being back in the palace, and what it looks like is we've got a real good murder mystery coming up in the next episode. Whew! That's going to be exciting. But while we wait for that episode, if you're looking for more writing advice, analyses, insights, reviews, and more, then please check out our other videos here on our channel. If you'd like to support the work that we do here, then commenting, liking, sharing our videos is very much appreciated. But if you would especially like to help us out, please check out the books that we've published. Links for them are in the description below. Give them a read. I believe that you are going to be highly entertained with the amazing stories and worlds and characters that we have created for you to enjoy. But thank you anyway so much for joining us on this incredible adventure that we call writing, and until the next video, y'all, tschüss.
Now go away, or I shall taunt you a second time!
失礼しますよ。失礼します。